Tacitus today, Tacitus Day, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the huge similarity, and I've mentioned this before, the huge similarity between how the British government dealt with the recent protests against mass migration in Britain, and how the US government dealt with the protests around the very, very suspicious 2020 presidential election, where a candidate who could barely string a sentence together and didn't campaign at all somehow got the highest number of votes by a long shot in the history of all presidential elections. Very suspicious in the face of it, and people protested, wanting proper audits and so on done of the voting process. Now, rather than do the audits and say, look, this was a totally legitimate election, and we'll show you. Look, let's do the audit. Instead of doing that, they decided instead to crack down on anyone that was complaining about what was obviously a very suspicious election. And so they engaged in a number of tactics to do, including putting massive resources to chasing people down, to arresting people on the lowest level of misdemeanor charges, and sometimes nothing at all. The entire accusation was fabricated. They were somehow just in the general vicinity at the time, and so they were being arrested as well, and no resources were spared. They would crisscross the length and breadth of the United States, chasing down somebody from some hick town in the middle of nowhere who did nothing other than, it was insane. The whole thing was insane. But then they would get people to plead guilty, and there were various methods of doing that. But the two key ones were to have a massive shopping list of accusations. And remember, some of these people are quite simple people. They're not sophisticated people. And they would get their own lawyer, who would actually be an agent of the government, for goodness sakes, who would encourage them to roll over and plead guilty. They're supposed to be your lawyer, but they're not. They represent the government, and they represent the attempt to squash and crush you, not to represent you. Same as most lawyers in the divorce court industry. They're there to make the man, encourage the man to roll over and just give everything and just meekly accept his financial ruination. And you've got to keep on working. It'll ruin your life, but you've got to keep on working so they can steal from you for decades to come, that sort of thing. And the guy thinks, oh, I guess you're my lawyer. And they have to pay this guy, who is, again, a government agent, to encourage them and convince them that they should just roll over and be happy about it. So that was one thing, getting plead guilty, and they'd have this this massive shopping list of charges against them that was wildly insane. A bit like the shopping list charges they bring against Trump. It's the same sort of methodology, and always it's always how ideological governments do this. You look at the charge sheets in, say, the Soviet Union or China. In the communist union, Pol Pot and so on, the charge sheets just went on forever, because once you cross into ideological law, the facts don't matter anymore. You just make anything up, and you can strangle any sort of interpretation of what you want. So you walk down Smith Street. Well, did you know that Smith Street was somewhere where 100 years ago a Nazi walked down again? And because that happened, that means you're a Nazi. Add it to the charge sheet. So insane sort of contrivances of coming up with charges. So that was one thing. So they said, well, you're gonna spend the next million years in prison, buddy. But we're good. We're good people here. We're decent people. If you plead guilty, we'll give you a couple of years instead of $1 million. And then, oh, okay, yeah, all right. Now the other way was to say, look, because of the severity of your crimes, you looked sideways on a Sunday, motherfucker. We can keep you in prison. We'll just tell the judge that you are so dangerous to society. You are the most public enemy numero uno. You are the most dangerous person that's ever existed, and so we can keep you detained until the trial. We can keep you detained for as long as we want. and for a year, 2 years, 3 years, longer. So you better say goodbye to your family. How old will your kids be? And that they'll work on them psychologically. So how old will your kids be there? Will they even remember you when you come out? What do you think your wife's going to do? Do you think she's going to wait for you until you come out? She's going to do it. Your life will be over. Your life will be over. Don't forget it. And we can keep you here for as long as we want to. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Habeas corpus? Ha! Ha! Habeas corpus. Shove it up your ass. So the guys, but if you sign this thing here, admitting to your evilness and admitting that you are personally Hitler, then we'll give you 6 months, and you'll be out in 3 months, 4 months. You'll be out pretty quickly. And so, hey, why wouldn't you do that? So these are the options that are put in front of these people. Now, for some of the people who are a little bit more worldly wise and conversant with the law, or at least sufficiently conversant, they mean, no, I have committed no crime. And in the end, they win. But sometimes the cost of winning is great. I've seen people in various scenarios over the years. And bear in mind, I've spent a lot of time preparing contracts for legal case, so I've got some sort of understanding of the law in a legal contract case instances, and where the facts do matter. So or did. So this idea of fighting them, saying, okay, well, if you've got the evidence, then come after me. If you haven't got the evidence, then you're going to fall over. Now, these people who are prepared to fight the good fight, they do typically win. But the cost of winning is sometimes huge. They are detained for a long time. They are mucked around. They're dragged into endless court hearings. They're drained financially. So they're then punished for their defiance. You defied us. You wouldn't take a plea. You wouldn't accept that we can arbitrarily charge you with bullshit charges. You wouldn't accept that, which means you're defying us. For defying us, we will crush you. And that's, again, very much bureaucrats in an ideology behave that way. Accountable governments and accountable bureaucrats do not behave that way. And so this is a very, very key difference here. And again, you're the demonized straight white Christian male. So it's now much more acceptable to suspend your legal rights, whereas it's not for if it was a minority person. So now, and activists have been stacked and all over the justice and the bureaucracies and the FBI and all that sort of stuff. So this is very much now. There are a number of safeguards against these sort of things ever happening. Habeas corpus being one of them. You can't bring people. You can't just arbitrarily arrest people, and the charge has to be tested in court. So they got around that by getting activist judges to just defer the case. So the judge would hear the case and say, okay, it'll be now deferred for another 3 months or something, and we'll hear it then. Or the merits of the case will be discussed. And they just keep on deferring it and deferring. Now, that is a way you can bypass the habeas corpus thing, where you can't just detain people, and political ideological governments do this. You can't just detain people while you want to dream up charges, invent them. Or to squeeze the person in this case, which is what they were doing. So it's a way you can bypass illicitly, and it's deceitful, but you can bypass habeas corpus and you just keep on kicking the can down the road, and you can keep someone in detention for many months. And then there are all sorts of other contrivances, such as, well, we think that the person may be in danger from the prison population, so we'll just keep them in solitary confinement. They're only allowed out 20 minutes a day. That's another form of torture. Now, where you may ask are the screaming human rights lawyers that seem to be everywhere these days, screaming about, Abdul's human rights. He can't be sent back to wherever, Pakistan or something. He can't be sent because of his human rights. He has human rights. But Billy Bob Smith's human rights are being not only trampled on, but being shit upon at a great height. And the human rights lawyers are nowhere in sight. Not a human rights lawyer anywhere. Somehow they're not interested in Billy Bob Smith's human rights, even though they're being trampled over left, right, and centre. Now, once ideological governments can get away with suspending or skirting around habeas corpus and doing, you know, blatantly political chasing and charging and imprisonments and so on. Once they've got a taste for that, you can't stop them. So tomorrow they'll turn on you or the next guy, and then you'll say, well, you know, I didn't think they'd do that, but they will, and they're coming for you. Now, whether they come for you tomorrow or, you know, next year or 5 years, 10 years from now, but they will come for you. And so your move should be to protect the sanctity of habeas corpus, the, you know, due legal process, the rule of law, and so on. And if you don't protect that now, they will come for you later. Never forget that. Never forget that. Now, coming to Britain, when the demonstrations against and the protests against mass migration took place, it was remarkable how quickly the British government clicked into gear. They jumped on it straight away. You know, all the, you know, the mass protests from the Palestinians. The government is powerless to act. The human rights. They have a right to protest. They have a right. They have a right. Rights. Right. So somehow, legally, the government just couldn't do anything about that. But when these people protest about mass migration, whammo! The government was onto it straight away and was pursuing it with a vindictive, malicious sense of vengeance. Now, as it turned out, as more details were emerging, the copybook here is that this is pretty much how the US government went about January 6th. I would argue the architects of the January 6th exercise came to Britain and said, look, this is how you do it. This is how you go about it. So I would argue that they're either a globalist cabal or they're some sort of you know, think tank or something. There's some group that's come along. Hey, we know how to deal with this. We know how you can you know, crush these people. And I'm thinking it's the same ruthless pursuit of people, again, who are in the general vicinity, the same fast track processing of the cases, the shopping list of accusations against people. But as the details are now emerging, they're using exactly the same thing. The shopping list of accusations is one, but the other thing is they're skirting around the habeas corpus thing. We can keep you detained, or on remand, as it's called in the UK. We can keep you detained for, you know, a year, 2 years, longer. You know, we can keep you detained for as fucking long as we want. The laws don't matter to us. You need to be shit scared about what we can do to you, but the laws don't matter. We are not governed by the rules, and we invent the rules. And we can do whatever we want to you, whenever we want, you know, however we want, severely as we want. You are nothing. You're not even a piece of shit on the ground. So you better just do whatever we tell you to do, and you better just accept whatever we put in front of you. Now, if you want to be hardball on this and have the matter taken to court and, you know, heard by a jury, for example, then you know, we can defer the court hearing for forever. And you'll be, because you're such a huge threat to the community. What threat am I? Well, you walk down the road at the time some protest was going 2 streets across. You know, hey, that's good enough for us. We can dress that up as a horrendous crime. And our activist prosecutors, activist judges, activist police, activist everything, we can add to that you used a racial slur against a black lesbian. But I didn't. We can say you did. And it's our word against you. So the guy's fucked. So faced with so much arbitrary, politicized, corrupt justice, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to be in prison for 2 years or 3 years or something. I better just plead guilty. Oh, well, you good little boy. Pat on the head. Good little boy. You're now a good straight white Christian male. Not like those bad straight Christian males that will insist they're not guilty. You're ideologically guilty. You're a fucking straight white man and you are evil. You are Hitler. And so on. So this idea of keeping people, again, the shopping list of accusations, all contrived and trumped up and bullshit, and also keeping people indefinitely in detention while they delay the case, which again subverts and skirts around habeas corpus, and as itself is an outrageous trashing of their human rights. Again, no human rights lawyers inside on this one. which shows you how political the human rights gig is. So people are just pleading guilty in order to just put an end to it all. And there's no mistake about it. This is not some accidental sort of byproduct of what's gone on here. This is a purpose. People are sitting down saying, okay, how can we get these? How can we get them? How can we fuck them? How can we crush them? And the idea of justice, the law, breaking the law, accountability, this sort of thing, equality before the law, that's all out the window, gone, absolutely gone. And this is purely, in my view, this is purely politicized law. And we're seeing the effects of it now. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.